Hi everyone. Can you hear me? Put your hands up if you can. Hi. You can see my presentation, amazing. So as you can see, my session is going to be mostly about texturing and a little bit about Cinema 4D. As you already heard, my name is Anna Natter. I'm a substance 3D design evangelist at Adobe. A bit about my backstory. I was meant to be an art teacher, but in the meanwhile, I realized that I like computers a little bit better. So in 2005, I started to work for television in real-time 3D, using Wizardry for 10 years. That was my first job. I really loved it. And simultaneously, I've been working in video production and 2D animation for quite a long time. In the last 6 years, I started to focus more and more on CD, and I use the Substance CD suite with, and lately I'm focusing also on Cinema 4D. I joined the Substance team in 2021, and this year I started to evangelism for Substance. So this is my story. In the last few months, I've been focusing mostly on the Substance and Cinema 4D workflow. I created a lot of backgrounders and it was mostly about product rendering, so let's take a look at my reel. Thank you. Thank you, guys. So, for those who are not familiar with the Substance 3D suite, basically we have a huge assets library which contains more than 18,000 3D assets, and it's constantly growing. I think it's more close to 19,000 already. You can find 3D models, materials, atlases, decals, and environment lights. And why is it interesting is because you can use all of these assets with the apps we have, for example, Sampler, Painter, or Designer, and you can use all of these for texturing in Cinema 4D. Substance CD, sorry, Substance CD Sampler is one of my favorite apps, and basically you can create and mix materials with it, and you can use different kind of procedural effects. There is also photogrammetry, which is not a part of my presentation today, but it is something that I really enjoy doing, and you should look it up if you're interested about that. And then we have Substance Painter. I don't think I have to introduce Painter to you. Maybe I have to. But this is like a texturing tool where you can find different brushes, generators, and smart materials, and you can texture any kind of CD set with Painter. And then we have Designer, where you can, basically, it's a node-based app where you can create procedural materials, patterns, and all kind of other things. And as I said, you can use them in Cinema 4D. Substance 3D Sampler basically became one of my favorite apps in the whole Substance 3D suite because I just like to digitize my surroundings. I think it's important to keep your eyes open and basically, but that's what I'm doing. I collect like images of interesting surfaces that you can see here, for example. And I like it because it's kind of unique and add a special touch to your design. I think you know the feeling when you see a 3D design somewhere and you can recognize the material. So I like to create things that are a little bit different, and that is how you can kind of develop your own style, I would say. And with Sampler, you can combine and mix materials with all these filters we have and create a little bit more advanced surfaces. And what is really cool about Sampler is that all the assets that you're downloading for the assets library, you can import it and use it as a sampler. So this is how the style looks, and you can basically filter for materials, models, and lights. So let's take a look at Sampler. So when you open a new project, this is how the interface looks like. And here you can find the libraries, you can find the starter assets, and here are also the filters. And here are your assets, and you can basically drag and drop any kind of material into the assets panel. I already had this material downloaded. Here in the view settings, you can change a lot of things. For example, the mesh that you are using, and you can find the best mesh for your project. Usually, I use the preview sphere because I can see the edges better. You can also change the lights, the environment lights here, for example. And with the shift and right mouse button, you can just turn it around. It's very practical. So let's start with the material that you can add. This is a rock material that I downloaded from Asset. And what you can do with it is you go to filters, and then you can add, for example, a water filter to your material, which is, I think, really cool. And you can just change the level, the water level, and change the darkness of the water. And you can also control the dirt, how much dirt you would like to have on the water. Here you can see it. Here on the top, in the top menu, you can change the resolution of your project, so you can, and which is good that it's procedural, so it's not like in Photoshop that when you set a resolution and you're basically stuck at that resolution, so you can always go higher. You can also change the view between the 2D and 3D view. You can change, and then here you can check all your channels. What I'm always doing is I always add the dirt filter to everything I'm doing. I know it's kind of like a tick, but I really like to do it. Because basically the dirt filter is just sits in the creases of the material, and what you can do is you can change the color to something like red, and then you can see exactly what it's doing. And we also have the dust filter that you can just add on top of it, and you can also change this to any kind of color you want. So you can, just get totally creative with it. Today I don't have the time to mention every single filter we have, but we have like weathering effects, and we also have different filters that create like I would say structural changes. For example, you can just use a material like this basalt, for example, and then you can go to your filters and look for pavement. And now you have this really interesting pavement material. And you can change the joint, height, and now it's, as you can see, it's a lot deeper. You can have more spacing, for example, or more round corners. There are a lot of parameters that you can change. You can literally be as creative as you want. And for example, you can add a filter called Erode. And what I'm always doing is that I just change the color of everything, so I never leave anything on the basic setting. So for this one, for example, I want to go like really dark, and then you can just change it that it only affects the sides of the material, and here you can see what is it doing. So it's really like a subtle effect, but I think it's really cool. And of course, you can just layer more and more stuff on top of each other, and this is how it looks. There is one more thing that I wanted to share about, and that is about the backpack project. I created this image file, which basically it's a seamless material. I already made it seamless in Photoshop. And then how can we turn this into a fabric material? It's actually super easy. You just have to drag and drop it into the viewport, and you can set it to bitmap. You can select the document size and just click on import. Nothing is happening. That is for a reason, because you have to drop a material like denim under it. And now, as you can see, we have this nice detailed denim material. And what you have to do is you have to change the output usage to base color. And now we have a material with this interesting bug pattern. And here you can change the tiling if you would like to have more repetition, just to check how it looks, if everything's seamless or not. And I always add I always add the dirt filter on the top of the fabric, because it gives a little bit more depth to the fabric material. So the next step is image to material. This is something really interesting. Basically, with this filter, you can turn any kind of image into a 3D material with the power of AI. What is important to mention that this AI algorithm is trained on our own data set. This is just like a simple wall. I took like a picture of a wall and I just uploaded it into Sampler, and it turned into this really interesting surface. And I just throw like a couple of atlases on top of it. And there is this glitch material, which I have a little interesting story about that I'm going to share with you in a minute. Let's start a new project. So I have this image. It's just a photo. Basically I saw this picture, this rock wall on the like a side of a church, I think, somewhere where I was walking. And what you can do is you can drag and drop it into the viewport, and you can select image to material, AI powered. There is something else that I'm not going to use in this project, but it's called upscale material. So when you have something, this is absolutely new. When you have like a lower resolution image, you can use AI to upscale this image. Let's go with 2K. I think that's enough. And then you have to wait a little bit, and then you will see that we have this this material. And if you check the 2D 3D view, you can already see that we have like a normal map generated. And you can be really specific about how you would like the micro or the medium details or the large details, and you can change everything. You just have to wait a little bit for it to be generated. And you can also choose from different categories. We have a lot of different categories that you can choose from. And I always check if my material is seamless, because I always make this mistake that I just forget to check that. And you can see that this is not seamless. So basically, you have to drop something called make it tile on the top of it. And now we have a seamless material. And if you open the 2D 3D view, if my mouse would cooperate, then here you can change the threshold and the smoothness, for example, and now you can control how this is going to look. And now we have an absolutely seamless material. You can also add something called Stonewall, and this is also one of those filters that create, as I call it, structural changes. And you can change the mortar haze, for example, and maybe change this to lighter so you can see what it's actually doing. So this is just a really unique 3D material that we just created in literally no time. So I would like to share something about this glitch material that I created. So it started like this, and what is really interesting about this is that we have something new in Photoshop Beta, which is called parametric filters. And basically, you can select something like this glitch filter, and this is something really cool. I will play around with this a lot, and it just came out in Photoshop Beta. So that's how I created this glitch image, and it happened to be seamless. And this is how the material turned out. I think it's really cool. And if you check this, you can see that I selected the leather category because I wanted it to be a little bit more shiny. You can also do color changes. For example, you can change the hue or the saturation of your material with this hue saturation filter. I think this is really fun. Or you can completely change all the colors with this color variation. You can select how many colors you would like to use, for example, 3 colors, and then you can just transform it into something completely different. So, how can we work with these materials in other apps? Basically,
Forger.
with this button, you can send your material to designer, painter, or stager, and you have to basically name it first, so it's gonna have the same name in Painter. And you can also export it. You have different options. You can change different formats. For example, you can go for an SBSR file, or you can JPEG, PNG, and you can select basically which channel you would like to export, and then you just click on this export button, and then you will have these image maps. For example, like the base color or normal in a folder, and you can basically that's what you can import into Cinema 4D. But I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. There is something on the Substance Media set side that first I did not. When I first saw it, I just didn't really know what is this about. Basically, the atlases are little image maps that are combined into like 3D material, and this is how they look on the side if you filter for them. We have all kind of different assets like debris, like leaves. We have like all kind of plastic, and for example, these broken terracotta pieces. And the way you can work with these atlases is the following. So, for example, I have this sandy rock material, and what I can do is that, for example, I can add the moss filter on top of it to just add some more green to this material. And we have something called Atlas Scatter. And basically, you can just drag and drop anything into this little placeholder here. And now you have leaves, and you can, with this Atlas Scatter filter, you can basically control the amount, how many leaves you would like to have, and the scale of them. And you can basically layer this, so you can adjust one more and add the different, like a different atlas on the material. And I use it sometimes to create some really, really interesting effects. The next thing, what is like basically my all-time favorite thing that I ever did in 3D, I think, is because I'm also into like sewing in real life, maybe that's why. So you can create really amazing embroidery materials with sampler, and we also have an embroidery patch filter, but this is called embroidery legacy filter. And we have a page called Substance CD Community Assets, and these are the materials I already uploaded. And this is a site where people can share their own creations with the community, and it's basically free to use. And if you look at this badge, this is called the Embroidery Legacy Filter, and you can download this and upload it into Sampler. This is how my renders look like in Cinema 4D when I use this embroidery material. And I really like these teeny tiny details, and that you can mix the fabric with the embroidery. So let's take a look how I created this. This is the image. Basically, I painted it in Adobe Fresco. You can see these little grungy moments here. And then I used a couple of mirroring effects, and I ended up on this image, this seamless pattern. And basically, you can just drop it here and use it as a bitmap. And as you see, nothing is happening again, which is a good thing. With this little plus icon, you can upload this filter to your assets. And what you have to do is you just have to upload it, drag it into your layer stack. And if you change the tiling, then you can see that you already have this really interesting embroidery material. And we have a lot of controls over this. And what I always like to do is that I change. We have this tweed fabric, and if you drag it here, you can see that it's going to replace the pink color with this fabric material. And you can select how many colors you would like to have in your embroidery, so you can go a little bit higher. You can change the embroidery scale. What I always do is I always bump up this a little bit, the width and the length, because it gets rid of these little holes and imperfections that you can see here. And here you can see that, for example, the second color we have is the red one. And what you can do with it is you can change it to, for example, change the direction of the embroidery to linear, and you have a lot of controls, like you can create like metallic or a little bit more rough embroidery. So this is how I created this material, and as I said, you can send it directly to painter to use. And if we jump into, we are not jumping anywhere, just a moment. So texturing with Substance 3D Painter. And why I like texturing with Painter, because you can directly paint on your models, you can create scratches, surface imperfections, and what I just said, that I can use my materials that are directly imported from, for example, Sampler. I like to use the generators that follow the surface of the models, like the dirt generator or the metal edgeware. And what is something new, and I use it a lot nowadays, is the new CD Pass tools where you can create stitching or puckering or zippers. So let's quickly take a look at this. If you open Painter for the first time and you don't really know what to do with it, you can always open a sample project, for example, Meat Mat, with like our little mascot. So when you open Painter for the first time and you like drag a material on your model, it's just like one, you can see that it's just like one layer. We are working with texture sets, so it always depends on how you set up your project and how many texture sets you have and how many parts your model is made of, basically. So now we are working on the head texture set. And you can change the tiling of the material. And you can change the rotation. in the properties panel, there is a lot of things you can control. What I would like to mention is that basically we are working with these material channels. So we are controlling the color, the heat, the roughness, the metallic normal at the same time. And in the viewport, you can check these how these look, basically which channel does what. And here in the assets panel, you can see that here we have the base materials and we have the smart materials. So what is interesting about the smart materials is that when you drag it in, you get a folder. So sometimes it's all of these materials are built from different texture layers and using different generators, for example, and you can edit them like one by one. There are a lot of properties you can change. It's really flexible. And if you change something, you can basically, and you would like to save this smart material back into your assets panel, you can do it if you go to right click and create smart material. Let's start from scratch. For example, you can create a new fill layer, and what you can do is that upload images, textures to every channel. For example, let's change the color to something else that you can see this. And you can turn around the environment light with the shift and the right mouse button. And then, for example, you can add something to the haze channel, and now we have this really interesting looking material with like 3 clicks. And if we create another material, another layer, sorry, and we do the same, for example, change different branch map. This is too much. So these work together, and you can also change the balance, for example, to have a little bit more subtle effect. But what you can do is how this is getting even more interesting. You can add the mask to it, and we have something called smart masks. And with this, you can basically just drag and drop these smart masks into this mask. And now you can already see that it's masked out very nicely. And you can control the balance and how this material is working. And then if you want to save it as a smart material, you have to put them in a folder. And then you just do a right click, and you can create a smart material. I created a lot of these materials, and this one, that is something that I always do, is that I always add the dirt generator on top of everything. And here you can control the dirt level, the contrast of the dirt, for example. So this is basically this is what I wanted to mention. There is something I forgot to say. Basically, what you have to do first to make all of these generators to work is that you have to make the maps, and this is how Painter gets all the information from the 3D model and turn them into these maps, like the normal and vert space normal and the curvature, and this is what the generators are using to create these really interesting effects. So let's take a look at the stitching. So what you can do is you have to create a new layer, and you have to find the top stitching tool. And basically you can just start drawing your stitching all around the model. And it is basically non-destructive, so you cannot really do anything wrong because you can control this curve with the points. If you would like to close the spline, you can do it here. And you can also decide if you would like to have curves or corners. And we have the properties panel here. Where you can change a lot of things. For example, the thickness of the thread, and you can also change the color of the thread so you can see better. Yeah, it's really big. So basically, this is how I created all the stitching on my bag renders. And if you're not happy with the placement, you can always go back and just change it. You can also change the puckering, the intensity of the puckering. And we have different, basically these path tools that you can use. For example, we have one that's called seam. And now we have these really interesting looking seams. We also have something called the zipper tool. And then here you can change, for example, if you would like to have metal, you can change the color of the zipper, and for example, the width of the fabric next to your zipper. We also have a puckering tool. So with this you can create some really nice effects, I would say. So this is one of the backpacks that I created for this for the project that I've been showing in my reel. And this has quite a lot of texture sets because I wanted to have like maximum resolution for my project. And as you can see, I used a lot of stitching, and I used also the zipper tool here, the material that I just created with sampler. So how you can use these things in Cinema 4D? What I always do is that I export the mesh, and I export the textures at the same time. So like I'm 100% sure that everything is matching. And then this is what I ended up with. And you can see that I have all the texture maps in this folder. And this is how the bag model looks like. And you can see all of these materials that basically turn into texture sets, and then that is what I used later on. These little zipper pulls are from actually Illustrator, because you can extrude the 3D, like you can extrude a simple outline in Illustrator, and you can just export it as a 3D model, and I imported it in Cinema 4D. And this bag is from Substance 3D Assets. And here you can see how the model is built together. And here you can see that these are all the Redshift materials. Basically, I just created a new standard material, and you know that you can replace a certain material with a Redshift material, and that's what I did. And I started to fill them one by one. Here you can see how it looks. So basically, you can import all the image maps, and you just have to connect them to the right place. For example, the base color, the roughness, the metalness, and what is important to mention is that for the normals to work, you have to use the bump map node. And in the bump map node, you have to change the input map type to tangent space normal, and then it's going to work. And about the displacement, basically we have a height map here, and then you can connect it to a displacement node as a text map, and then you can control the scale of the displacement. And what you need actually is a redshift object tag, and you have to turn on the tessellation and the displacement, and you can basically control the displacement with these sliders. So this is how I texture this backpack. And these are the final renders. I hope you like. I rendered everything with Redshift. So thank you so much, guys, for following my session. You can follow me on Instagram if you'd like to.